Hello everyone and welcome to another Directions Mag Geospatial webinar. Today sponsored by ROK Technologies. I'm Barbara Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Mag with our assistant webinar producer Lynette Qualia. If you have any questions about your connection, just drop us a note in the chat. We'll do our best to help you. A big thanks to the geospatial community for being our loyal readers for 20 years. We encourage you to read feature articles, daily news, and attend more webinars at directionsmag.com. We are standing by to take your questions. Type those at any time in the question box during the webinar. Because we're just 20 minutes today, we're going to collect all of your questions and the ROK team will follow up with you individually after the webinar. We are recording today, so keep an eye on your inbox for more information. Snap a photo of any favorite screens you see with the camera button, and we appreciate your participation on our post-webinar survey so we know exactly what you are liking in the future. Today, we're exploring how easy it is to take your GIS software to the cloud. We are happy to welcome back Jason Harris. Great to have you back with us today, sir.
All right, so thanks. Yeah, again, the title of this presentation is the top 3 reasons to move your GIS to the cloud and how you can make that happen. I should say that this is going to be a really quick overview of some of the key points. And again, if you have any questions at all, just jot them down, take a picture, or follow up in the chat box, and I will definitely get back to you. So here's the agenda. Here's what we're going to cover. First and foremost, the big question is, why would you want to listen to me? That's sort of kind of a big deal. Next, and this will really be the meat of the presentation, it's why would you want to move to the cloud? You know, what are the big advantages of a move in that direction? We will review, several of the big advantages to a cloud-based deployment. And then to follow up on that, why we should be moving to the cloud, I'm going to give a very, very quick AWS App Stream demo. I want to just show, just for a quick minute, on just how easy it is to go ahead and interact and manage your cloud-based GIS directly in the cloud. And then lastly, we'll have a quick rundown on what the steps you can do to actually get this cloud migration moving. How can you make this happen? So first, why do you want to listen to me? Well, first, ROK has been an Esri business partner since 1997, and I have been here myself since 1998. Suffice to say that we know, we've been around the GIS and the Esri world for a long time, and we've also been very, very early adopters of cloud technology. So that means we really have the expertise in both cloud, IT, and GIS, where we currently manage, many ArcGIS enterprise environments across many different cloud platforms for lots of different people. So along with that, logically, you would think we're also partners. We're actually advanced technology partners with AWS, which I guess pretty much means that we know our stuff. Also, I don't want to forget the other big players in the cloud. We're also partners with Microsoft as well. But honestly, here's the big one. Why you should listen to us, or why you should listen to me, is that we are straight up hardcore techie GIS nerds. We are very passionate about GIS and how you can put that cloud technology to work for you. So here we go. Why would you want to move to the cloud? Well, first, the cloud is now fully mature. You can effectively move your entire enterprise GIS environment to the cloud. And what we see here is sort of what a typical present-day cloud deployment might look like. We've got ArcGIS server, you've got portal, data store, you've got your databases, and you probably also have some public-facing applications. And that really does work great, except that it's missing one very key component to a fully deployed enterprise GIS, and that is your users. So these are the biggest issues and questions that we'll often hear when organizations, are coming to us or, asking questions about, we want to make this move to the cloud, right? These are the sort of the questions that we hear. So how do our users interact in this cloud environment? How do we get our data to the cloud? How do we get it back from the cloud? How do we get our data updates? Do we have to do replication or weekly data dumps from our on-premise editing environment? So the first thing that comes to mind when I hear people ask these questions is that they think that they need to maintain two separate systems. They have one in the cloud environment and they have one on-premise. And quite frankly, we see this type of thing all the time. In most cases, the cloud is often used for hosting, server-based applications, for public-facing applications, maybe portal, things of that nature. And then the on-premise is used for your GIS folks to do their everyday analysis, their data editing, and then probably at the end of the week, there are people manually pushing their data up to that cloud environment. So this is both inefficient and expensive in terms of hardware, software licensing costs, not to mention the lost productivity. I mean, you have to have somebody working on these data dumps and moving data and troubleshooting and things of that nature. A second common scenario that we see pretty often is a cloud deployment, very similar to what I have here on the screen. They've got their enterprise geodatabases, things of that nature, and then they'll try to access and edit that data locally from their PC that's sitting on premise. Let me tell you that you probably know, but spatial data is very, very thick, very heavy, and it can be extremely tough to drag over the open internet or in a VPN, whatever. That scenario just does not perform adequately. There's just way too much latency in the middle there. So what's the solution? Well, the big cloud companies, and I should say that this is especially true of AWS, provide turnkey, very easy to deploy application virtualization technologies. Okay, so what does that mean? That sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. Well, really what it means is that you can run ArcGIS Desktop and ArcGIS Pro and all the other everyday applications that you use in your daily workflows directly in the cloud and simply stream the pixels back to your local desktop. And that local desktop can be a dummy terminal, it could be a Chromebook, it could be a Mac, it can be really whatever. It could even be a tablet if you wanted to. The key point here is that it runs just as fast, and in most cases, this type of setup will run faster than your typical on-premise system. Because the idea here is that you're taking advantage of the inexpensive compute resources like CPU, RAM, and like raw GPU and compute power that's plentiful in the cloud to power these hungry, resource-heavy applications. So really the big takeaway here is that you can run these applications from anywhere that you have an internet connection. You don't need ArcGIS Desktop or Pro to be installed locally. If you're out in the field or working from home one day, it doesn't matter. You still have access to all of your applications and all of your cloud-based data in one single place. The best part of this is you only pay for what you use. So let's say, for example, you need to do some high-end 3D modeling with ArcGIS Pro. You just launch your application and close it when you're done. It's a very cost-effective way to get access to some extremely very high-end hardware. And we are going to do, like I said, we're going to do a very brief demo of AppStream in just a bit, because you really need to see it to fully appreciate just how cool it is. And number two, GIS in the cloud is very cost-effective, and it's very, very easy to demonstrate a competitive return on your investment. Just doing some quick calculations, and we're just going to take, for example, a new on-premise deployment, and we can quickly run through the numbers. We're going to take, just for example, two very minimally configured Dell rack servers, the ubiquitous R730. This is the one that, we see a lot, people are buying. We're going to use one for the main VMware host, and we'll leave that second one in place for redundancy in case of the host failure. Let's add in 6 new laptops or desktops that your everyday users are going to be using for ArcGIS Desktop. And now that people are starting to utilize ArcGIS Pro in their daily workflows, let's add in 2 kind of beefy GPU-enabled workstations that will be capable of running ArcGIS Pro. Of course, and as we all know by now, that ArcGIS Pro is a little bit more resource intensive. So you need a little bit more on the CPU side, RAM side, but most importantly, you're going to need a dedicated graphics card, a dedicated GPU that's going to make all those 3D visualizations possible. And then lastly, in that kind of cost breakdown, we need to remember the money for the virtualization, host software, and the OS, et cetera, et cetera. So if we look at it, a very conservative low-end estimate, we're already looking at about $50,000 for just a base ArcGIS enterprise deployment. And if you're like most folks, you're probably on some type of 3-year budget hardware refresh cycle, meaning you get new hardware every 3 years. So when you're budgeting out for this, your new enterprise system, you really do need to plan for your future expansion right now on day one. So you need to think about what the requirements are going to be for your GIS in year 3. Will your hardware that you spec out on day 1 going to be able to keep up with your requirements in year 3? Answer is probably not. So what you're going to have to do is budget out for additional hardware, spending more than what I'm showing here in this baseline configuration. But effectively, that means you're going to be overpaying and over-provisioning for your hardware in years 1 and 2. And then hopefully the hardware that you spec for year 3 will match up and be able to keep up with all the new requirements. Now let's just take a really quick look at the cloud column and where I've added basically a roughly equivalent system. Short answer, it's going to cost you about $11,500 per year. You can see there's a pretty big difference there. But even more important is to realize here is that the scalability of a cloud system is much greater than that of an on-premise. So as your needs change, whether it be in 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 years, you're going to have that immediate immediate ability to scale your system. Like if you need to add more compute capacity to ArcGIS server, or you want to start bringing on additional ArcGIS enterprise application servers like GeoEvent or image server. This is all possible without waiting on that 3-year hardware refresh cycle, or crossing your fingers that IT will be nice and give you another server, which we know is not often the case. So continuing on, and I know I said I'm going to give you the top 3, but I kind of lied. These are also very important, so I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention this stuff. So I'm just going to briefly go over a couple of these. Scalability. Now, I did mention this in the previous slide, the ability to scale over time as your needs increase, right? That was the previous slide. But I want to dive in a little bit more. Unlike planning for scale, unlike purchasing hardware ahead of time, what's going to happen with those big unplanned events? We all can see that natural disasters certainly would appear to be occurring with greater frequency, things like hurricanes, floods, wildfires. Now, consider that your GIS probably provides mission-critical information for your emergency responders, and maybe they provide like evacuation information or evacuation routes for the public. What's going to happen when your traffic spikes, when everybody is trying to get to your system? Well, your GIS is going to do no good when it's totally overwhelmed with traffic and it takes a nosedive. If you don't have the hardware, the bandwidth, and the scaling in place, you're going to be out of luck on premise. So scaling up to meet those demands in the cloud is really as easy as clicking a button. And in the case of auto scaling, which is another great tool that you can use, you don't even have to click a button. It will scale for you. At ROK, we really do see these types of events all the time. People always say, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. And then hurricane season comes or wildfire season comes and their traffic just goes nuts. You can be ready to meet those demands. You just have to prepare and really think about a cloud deployment. But just as easily as you can scale up when it's time to scale back down after the event passes, You just scale back down, and again, you're not going to pay for what you're not using. Next, we can speak about the resiliency of your GIS. So some quick questions you should ask yourself. Do you have, or what is your disaster recovery plan? What happens if the power or the internet is cut to your facility? How quickly could you really recover from that? Suffice to say that this type of resiliency in the cloud is very, very straightforward to implement. Deploying your GIS infrastructure, let's say in multiple availability zones, which means just different physical location, that's very straightforward and very easy to deploy. Automatic snapshots and backups that get shipped off to other geographic zones, again, a snap to script in a cloud environment. Something to consider. What if there was a catastrophic failure of your cloud servers? Like there's a hardware failure on a host or your OS gets corrupted. In reality, it's really not that big of a deal. You just spin up your image on a brand new host. Consider that same scenario with an on-premise server. Let's say the RAID array goes down or goes bad. Now what? You've got to go order those drives, you got to get them overnighted, then you got to rebuild the array. We know all of that takes a lot of time, and you're likely going to have a lot of unhappy users. And lastly, I'm going to touch on security in the cloud, which I think is perhaps the topic that gets maligned the most. Systems in the cloud, I would argue, are more secure than those found on premise. Cloud providers have deployed extensive monitoring tool sets for intrusion detection and remediation. These tools are straightforward in their setup and enable you to do real-time monitoring in the cloud. You can see who's trying to break into your system. And now consider doing the same thing on premise. So think about all the complicated and the very time-consuming security suites and even security hardware appliances that need to be installed and maintained on premise. And let's not even forget that it's relatively easy to gain physical access to a server on premise. You just have to walk down to the server room and see if the IT guy will let you in, and then you can, a server is compromised just like that. That's really not the case in the cloud. But the takeaway here is I want you to remember that whether any system, whether this be in the cloud or on premise, you really do need the expertise and tools for the job. You should not take your security requirements lightly in either case, but I will say that the tools that are readily available in the cloud are fantastic. All right, so I'm done with the boring slides for now. What I'm going to show you real quick is how easy it is to interact with a cloud-hosted solution. Again, this has always been that missing link for folks that are using GIS in the cloud. The servers are super easy to deploy, but after that, what about the folks that are using that GIS in your everyday workflow? These are the people that are editing, that are doing the analysis. How do they get access to those cloud resources? Well, I am going to show you, and probably by doing so, I should say that I am breaking a cardinal rule of the live webinar, and I'm going to show you a live demo. Wish me luck, everybody. Here we go. So hopefully everyone sees on my screen what I've got here is AppStream. This is one of the products from AWS. And in this demo, I've got a couple of windows already open, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Pro. I've already opened up my project. And let me go back and we'll just look at the scene. Again, this is a heavy-duty, high-intensity GPU scene. This is not something that I would normally say or recommend that you run on your local laptop. This would likely crush it. This is some heavy-duty stuff. This stuff is rendering completely in the cloud, completely on the same subnet as your existing GIS infrastructure hosted in the cloud. That's really the big key takeaway, is to remember that, again, I'm just pushing pixels down to my local machine here. You can see the responsiveness. And again, I hope that this is translating well over the webinar. There may be a little bit of a lag, but I can assure you that using AppStream in this type of environment, I far prefer to use this than using it on my local laptop. It's terribly slow. I know we just got to look at this real quick. If anybody after the webinar, again, is more interested in looking at something like this, I'll be more than happy to send you guys a demo. I'd love to talk about it ad nauseum if you want. So, but for now, we're just going to close. And that was the slide I was going to show you right before. And then this was my demo slide. All right, now, how do I actually make this happen? How do we prepare for this move to the cloud? And preparation, that's the big one. How do we do that? It really starts with a good assessment, and I really cannot stress this one enough. You have to understand what your organization needs. So start asking yourself these questions. You know, what do I want to accomplish? So are you currently running a system on premise? Does it currently meet your needs? What are your pain points? What are your performance bottlenecks? What do you think you could be doing better or more efficiently? What about future growth, like adding new features to a ArcGIS enterprise system? Is it time to make that switch to Pro or start taking advantage of things like GeoEvent? Do you want to integrate with single sign-on? Things of that nature. This next one, and this is a big one, document. We strongly suggest that you diagram out your current system and leave no detail undocumented. Things like your map services, your portal users, permissions, your privileges, your scheduled scripts, your web applications. The key here is to be very, very exhaustive. And when this is done, the migration will go, your migration will go smooth and your go live will be a piece of cake. Architect. Now, obviously, this is a very key step. We will often get calls from folks that didn't get this right. While the principles of an on-premise and cloud-based system are similar in that they both use servers and workstations, are also very different when it comes to architecting and deployment. It's extremely important to have somebody available to you that is familiar with best practices and cloud deployments. So really, don't be afraid to get help from an expert. We see lots and lots of mistakes at this stage, and we end up having to go back and fix other people's work. And then migrate, the migration plan. Think about what's going to be best for your organization. Do you want to lift and shift your current system as it is now, or should you design a brand new system? There are several available tools that will let you do, real-time replication from your on-premise servers directly to the cloud. And if you have a very large system, this could be a very good option. But on the other hand, we see lots of clients to take this time to actually think about and plan what they want their GIS to do in the future. This gives them that chance to modernize their GIS system, and they basically deploy a brand new cloud-based system that will run in conjunction with their current on-premise system. And then we migrate the tools, and then we migrate the data. And then after fully tested and verified, it's as simple as a new cutover to the new system and retire the old. And conclusion, that's really it. I know we didn't have a lot of time to cover this monster of a topic. Again, this was really meant to be a quick, brief overview of why and how you should move to the cloud. I do realize that we just scratched the surface here, so I would really, really encourage you to drop me a note if you have any questions about any of this, if you wanted to see an app stream demo, something like that. Like I said before, I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff, and sadly, I really enjoyed talking about it. So feel free to drop me a line.
Thanks, Jason. It's really cool stuff, folks. And I know that we're very brief today, so we appreciate you stopping by. And all of you that have asked questions, we're going to share this with Jason, and he will follow up with you. Some really good questions for you, Jason. So
oh, great.
You aren't the only nerd in the room. It's okay.
All right.
All the love. So folks, keep an eye on your inbox for the recording. That may give you a better idea of what some of those things look like in real-time refresh. We also appreciate your opinions on our survey on the way out and hope that you will join us for more webinars this week. Everybody go have a great day. Tell a friend about ROK and Directions Mag. We'll see you soon.